have been some guard outside the presidential palace, etc. But they seem to have been taken totally by surprise. The point at issue now is what will
known to have, Venezuela is known to have largest proven oil reserves. I'll just bring in strategic affairs expert Robin Sachdeva as well here. Mr. Sachdeva, estimated 303 billion barrels. Venezuela is home to world's largest proven oil reserves. Now, this could be a field day for US companies, isn't it? And that's why we see Venezuela saying that it is an attempt to only target the resources of Venezuela.
No, absolutely so, without any doubt. And as you very rightly say, Venezuela sits on the largest proven reserves of oil on planet Earth. It does not produce as much, right?
Yeah.
For various reasons. Production is Saudi and Russia and America. So our viewers would be well, aware that Venezuela is the largest oil reserve, and that is one big factor in this whole calculus. The other big factor in this calculus is, of course, Trump and America do not want any leftist, socialist, China-friendly regime in their backyard. And you may remember just hardly a few weeks ago, the US came out with its national security strategy doctrine, right? Wherein it said that the Western Hemisphere has to be completely under the dominance of the US. So that's the other factor with, regime change, which America wanted. And then, of course, the issue with drugs, fentanyl and cocaine smuggling, and illegal immigration and, crime gangs from Venezuela, which Trump claims are, disturbing peace in America.
I have to interrupt you there, Mr. Sachdeva and General Bakshi, please stay on with us. We have the reaction coming in. The first reaction from Maduro's administration. In fact, the defense chief, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, has reacted. He says it's been subjected to criminal military aggression by US government. It's driven by greed for our strategic resources. Listen in, viewers.
Buenos días, pueblo heroico de Venezuela, soldados y soldadas de la patria, hijos e hijas de Bolívar. La Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana informa al mundo entero que en la madrugada de hoy, 3 de enero, el pueblo venezolano ha sido objeto de la más criminal agresión militar por parte del gobierno de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Hasta el momento, la barbarie de las fuerzas invasoras que han profanado nuestro suelo sagrado en las localidades de Fuerte Tiuna, Caracas, los estados Miranda, Aragua y La Guaira, llegando a impactar con sus misiles y cohetes disparados desde sus helicópteros de combate en urbanismos de población civil, para lo cual estamos ya levantando la información referente a heridos y muertos. Frente a este ataque ruin y cobarde que amenaza la paz y estabilidad de la región, elevamos la más contundente denuncia ante la comunidad internacional y todos los organismos multilaterales para que se condene al gobierno norteamericano por la flagrante violación de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas y del derecho internacional. La Venezuela libre, independiente y soberana rechaza con toda la fuerza de su historia libertaria la presencia de estas tropas extranjeras que solo han dejado a su paso muerte, dolor y destrucción. Esta invasión representa el ultraje más grande que ha sufrido el país, que responde a la insaciable codicia de nuestros recursos estratégicos. Muy lejos de una supuesta lucha contra el narcoterrorismo, esta deplorable acción busca forzar definitivamente un cambio de régimen y someternos a los designios espurios del imperialismo norteamericano, pisoteando el derecho inalienable a la autodeterminación por el que lucharon.
So, Major General Bakshi, we just heard the defense chief, and he calls it a military aggression, criminal military aggression by America, and driven by greed for for Venezuela's strategic resources. Now, for decades, from Chavez's time, we've seen there have been attempts from America. America always had interest in these Latin American countries. Venezuela has been one of them. There was a coup attempt during Chavez's time as well, which failed. And Maduro has also been resisting all the attempts to isolate him, sanctions after sanctions and whatnot. You feel that somewhere Maduro got an inkling of what's coming, and he just a day ago had tried to extend an olive branch, assuming that he has no other option left. Now, what really happens here, sir? Is US going to install another government? What really happens from here on?
Like I said, we are a bit surprised, but not too much, because the simple fact is that America has a habit of not taking on peer group military powers like Russia or China, but chooses targets carefully for their weakness, for their helplessness. They've hit Libya, they've hit Iraq, they've hit Afghanistan. But the amazing fact is, in each of these, they had severe problems, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan. They got bogged down in long-term insurgencies. And at the end of it, they had to leave. So there were a number of American military experts, strategic experts like Professor Mearsheimer, who were warning the United States not to do this because it could lead to getting bogged down for the long term. From the way things have gone, the air defense systems, the early warning systems of Venezuela do not seem to have performed well at all, because the American heliborne forces were able to penetrate. That means the suppression of enemy air defenses, SEAD, was near total. They have used a barrage of missiles, cruise missiles, Tomahawks, etc., to soften the target. And the special forces have launched a very neat precision raid to capture Maduro alive. That quite obviously means that there were not much defenses at the presidential palace, which is surprising. And if there were, they haven't put up much of a resistance, or seem to have been taken totally by surprise. What remains to be seen is, will the Venezuelan armed forces, will the Venezuelan defense minister continue the fight, even in the absence of Maduro? Will he continue the fight? Will he continue to resist in terms of a guerrilla war? From the way it has gone so far, doesn't seem likely. That means the Americans have been able to, enforce their sway in their own backyard. They've gone in with overwhelming strength. They've gone in very carefully, very methodically. They've chosen, like I said, a target with care so that it is weak, and America can show a big drama to the world of how powerful the American forces are. They remain to be tested against peer group forces. Will this take the shape of Libya, or will there be a resistance at the grassroots level? Will there be an insurgency that goes on and bogs the United States down interminably? Remains to be seen. But from what has appeared so far, it seems to have been a successful operation, a very neat operation to insert special forces which were ready for a long time. The American aircraft carrier Gerald Ford, one of the largest, was there on Setu with a naval armada. Some 30 boats purported to be carrying drugs had been sunk. 3 to 4, oil tankers had been captured. And there were some rumors that the Russians had sent in the Iskander missiles, hypersonic, and other equipment. Even the Chinese are supposed to have supplied equipment. If the Chinese had supplied air defense equipment, it seems to have been a bit of a disaster, like it had turned out in Pakistan. We will have to await more results. Details now are sketchy. What remains to be seen is, will Venezuela simply fold up like Libya,
Yeah.
or will they continue the fight? Will they continue the fight? Will they try and hit back at the United States itself through the Iskandars, through the others? I'm sure the United States would have taken some preemptive action to prevent that kind of a scenario. We'll have to wait and watch, but for the time being, it looks like finito. Not a very creditable fight by the Venezuelans so far. Whether they continue the fight, even in the absence of their president, remains to be seen. Here was a charismatic president, no doubt. He had resisted for 2 decades, he had resisted coup attempts. He seemed to be coup proof like Cuba, but now they have used their special forces to physically take him out. Will the rest of Venezuela just fold up and surrender, or will they show the fight? Will they show some fight? Will they put up a fight? Is what remains to be seen. And if they do, and it becomes a guerrilla quagmire for the United States, then there could be outcomes that are not very rosy for the Americans. But for the time being, from what has appeared so far, and which is very sketchy, they seem to have succeeded. Otherwise, it has come from the highest level. Donald Trump himself has confirmed that they have Maduro and his wife in their captivity.
Absolutely. Ms. Robin Sachdeva, as we're talking about the Delta Force, as per reports, the U.S. military's elite special mission unit, which has been, of course, conducting operations all across the globe for decades now, including the ones in West Asia as well, be it Iraq and others as well. They had been deployed. So it was a fully planned, capturing. And this would be, of course, being, planned for a long, long time now. But as, GD Bakshi, General Bakshi was saying that, the US has not been tested against brute forces, major forces. This sort of a strike, what Venezuela is left with no options. What, in your understanding, could be any assistance coming? Do you see any sort of assistance coming directly or indirectly for the Venezuelans?
Thank you. I don't think, or I don't see, any chances of any assistance coming to Venezuela of the military kind. Neither Russia nor China is going to be sending their troops, right? Yes, they might be supplying the weapons, and they are supplying the weapons. But now, when will the weapons reach? And even if the weapons reach, what scale and what efficiency and what this thing of the weapons would be there. So as of now, it looks Venezuela has no or not much options. However, the fact is that the Venezuela military, how it conducts itself in the coming days and weeks is the key point. The military in Venezuela was heavily loyal to Maduro. Loyal oblique had its own self-interest. Maduro had promoted more than necessary number of generals in the army. There's a certain proportion here. He was promoting people, good high salaries, and also giving the army the positions in various public sector organizations. And of course, oil is a big, producer there. So the PDVSA, the National Oil Company, many of the army generals were employed, quote unquote, or in PDVSA, and they were, of course, partaking in corruption and extra income. So the army had a huge interest to stick with Maduro. Also, the army faces many charges of human rights violations and such, right? So the idea is that if Maduro is replaced and let's say a new government, quote unquote, government comes in power, the opposition, then many of the army generals will face very severe cases against them of corruption and much more. So therefore, the army did not want Maduro to go. Now, Maduro gone. Does the army stick on in its own self-interest to perpetuate its own, hold in the country? That would be the thing. Or in some time, an opposition, which is there already, emerges and comes to power through some, electoral or some such interim government process. I think that's what America is pushing for. Basically, yes, get Maduro out, let there be political instability, chaos, the army, bogged down, and people come to the streets and say that a new government has to come in place. That's what America is playing for. One. Secondly, in this, a tangential, target is also Cuba. Cuba depends to a good extent on Venezuelan oil. Okay, it purchases about 50% of its import needs from Venezuela. Once that oil goes down or is, blocked, already Cuba was suffering economic impact due to the, blockade of Venezuelan ships. So there could be simultaneously economic crisis in Cuba, which could again prepare the grounds and make a ripe situation for regime change. So, Venezuela, let's see how it goes, is the first one. It progresses. And then subsequently, I do think that Cuba could also be very much on the target in terms of the plans of America. Going back again to the NSS, the strategy document which they released a few weeks ago, this whole region, America wants its complete dominance in this Western hemisphere. So, therefore, obviously, the leftist and socialist regimes and those regimes which call America an imperial power or blame it for imperialism, okay, they would need to go according to the Trump doctrine. That's what it seems.
Mr. Sachdeva, before I go across to General Bakshi, I want to again just come to you for a response on what impact this could have on the economy as well if US gets its way. And it's, apart from that, it's really interesting to see when, United States goes on to lecture, Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize and goes on to lecture on ceasefires and why India and Pakistan should not fight and how it could have been so bad and whatnot. US goes in where it wants to goes in and conducts strikes and captures the head of state. Sir, this is something really what the world is watching is the double standard of the Americans, and Trump per se in the latest is an example, is a testimony to that, sir. What impact would this have if I would, have your reaction on the economy as well?
Well, thank you very much. Both points very valid. Impact on economy, and secondly, to the point, see, America looks at itself as a lion in the jungle.
Yeah.
Okay, it is prowling, and wherever it feels necessary or needed, it captures a prey for itself. That's what the American foreign policy now is. We are back, broadly speaking, to the rule, if not the rule, to the jungles. Okay, that's it. Now, in terms of the economic impact, it could, by the way, help crude oil prices. Because if this transition happens, let's say if it happens, right, theoretically, and in a month or so things settle down and Venezuela has an interim, some government in charge, and the leftist socialists are out of power in Venezuela. Venezuela is no longer an anti-US thorn in the side. Then Venezuelan oil will flow into the market. Already, by the way, yes, Chevron, one American company, has and it continues to harness oil from Venezuela under a special agreement, right? But now it could mean that you would have ExxonMobil also coming in. And by the way, remember, next to Venezuela and bordering Venezuela and Guyana and in the sea, there has been another major discovery of oil, I think about a year ago. Right. So this whole region is very rich in oil. So it would mean that ExxonMobil and Chevron would increase its, production, whatever production it has. So thereby, it would bring more oil into the world market. And if it brings more oil, then economics would say that the oil prices should go down. Okay. It could also have an impact on Cuba, as I was saying. Cuba will no longer be able to get a special deal on the Venezuelan oil under an agreement they had. They were getting discounted oil. So Cuba, again, will face more economic distress. China is one of the biggest buyers of Venezuelan oil, right? China would have to probably also now ratchet up or down whatever the world oil price